Hello folks, it's Jennifer McGuire. I hope you had a good weekend. Today I want to share a technique with you that I learned from one of my kids. I remember them doing this in art class a while back, and I thought I would use it to create some fun night sky backgrounds today. Now, I really like the look of watercolor, however, I really struggle with it. So this technique is perfect for me because all you do is you put down watercolor, put food wrap on top, and let it dry, and you end up with some really cool effects. I'm going to show you a bunch of examples, and I promise it's something that you'll want to try because it's so easy to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into making a few of the backgrounds. So I have some Ranger watercolor paper here. These pieces are cut to 6 inches by 4 1/4. I just wanted them a little bit longer. Now the Ranger watercolor paper is the same as the Tim Holtz Distress watercolor paper. The reason I use this watercolor paper so much is because it's bright white, and I'm not like a watercolor artist, so I don't need everything to be perfect with my paper. I just want it to be white. I'm also using the Gansai Tambi watercolors today. This is a wonderful creamy watercolor. I like it because you can get a good amount of color out of it, make it nice and thick, but you could probably use any watercolor for this. I'm starting by putting some water into the colors I plan to use, just so that it soaks in and allows the paint to get good and creamy, because I want to put down a lot of color when I apply this. I'm going directly to the dry paper with the color, and I'm just going back and forth. And note that I am not putting much effort into this. It really doesn't matter. The food wrap will actually do the technique for you. So I'm going to apply down here purple, red, orange, and yellow. Now, the more color you put down, the more intense your results will be. So you'll see me go back over this a few times. I also feel it's best to do this technique with a good amount of water on your paper. So what you'll see me do here is put down a good amount of color, and then I'll go back and add some water to it. I find that the more color and the more water you put on it, the more the food wrap will give a cool effect. I know I'm ready when I have an intense amount of color and a good amount of water on this. If I were to tilt it, it would kind of drip down. Okay, so now I have a piece of saran wrap, just good old-fashioned food wrap, and I am going to take this and stretch it across the paper. And this time what I'm going to do is kind of make stripes in it. You can see those wrinkles, so I'm just kind of pulling it with my fingers to the sides so that I'll end up with these kind of wrinkles going from side to side. I'll show you another way to do this later. I'm pressing it down firmly, but you could do more wrinkles to get more variation, which you'll see in a bit. But here I'm just kind of doing a few wrinkles along the way and kind of smushing them down. Then the hardest part of this technique is that you need to set this aside to dry. Now it's best to let it dry completely, but today I didn't have time to do that, so I only let it dry for like an hour and I came back to it. Maybe not even that long. So you really don't have to wait till it's completely dry if you don't want to. So the saran wrap or the food wrap that I'm using is the kind that you use in your kitchen. I actually had to go out and buy some because I use press and seal in my kitchen, but press and seal doesn't work the same for this technique. So you want the good old-fashioned, inexpensive saran wrap or food wrap for this. You could probably use a baggie, but I really think saran wrap works better for this because it gets real wrinkly. So it works good in getting those wrinkle effects. So for this one here, I'm putting down lots of blues and purples. And once I have a lot of color down and a good amount of water, I'm going to take another piece of saran wrap and watch. I'm putting more wrinkles in it this time, but I am pulling them all from side to side. So I'll end up with like these lines going along the background. I thought that would be kind of cool for a night sky. So I'm going to go ahead and push this all down, and then I'll set that one aside to dry. Now I went through and made a bunch more. I just had a ball with this. I got lazy and decided I didn't need to tape it down anymore. So I'm just doing it right onto the paper and applying lots of color here. So you'll see at the end of this video, I have a ton of examples. So you can see the different looks that you get depending on what colors you use, how many wrinkles you use, so on and so forth. So here again, I'm applying a bunch of wrinkles, pulling all the way to the sides so that the wrinkles go from side to side, and I'll set that one aside too. Now this time I'm using a dark blue cardstock, and I'm using Fine Tech watercolors. These are like a pearlescent watercolor that works really well on dark colors. So I thought I would try that here. So I'm putting down some purple, blues, and silvers. I'm not putting as much color down on the paper this time because I wanted the blue to show through. But I again am putting lots of wrinkles down with the food wrap, and I'll get this really cool technique. Now there was one other variation of this that I tried and I wanted to share with you. I think this is how most people do this technique. I put down color and water, and this time I'm taking crumbled up food wrap. So I just crumbled it in my hand and I'm pressing that down onto there and then putting something heavy on it to dry. And this will give us a different look in the background that is really cool. So I encourage you to try putting the food wrap down in different ways. You'll get different results each time. Okay, so now it's time for the big reveal on each of these. I'm going to go ahead and pull the food wrap off. This is the first one we did without very many wrinkles, and you can see those like lines that you get back and forth. It's really beautiful in real life. It'd be fun if you put some shimmer in the water too before you did the food wrap. I'll try that one next time. Now this one had more wrinkles across it, so you can see you get more variations. I do find the longer you let this dry, the more intense the variation is. Now here's the one I did on blue cardstock. Now it doesn't look like a whole lot here, but when we turn it into a card, it really has a cool effect. A lot of these pieces are that way. You got to incorporate it into something, and then it looks really neat. Now these next few, I put an intense amount of color down and then put the food wrap, and you can see more of those variations in it. I think the more color you put down again, the better the results. Now here I put down a ton, and you can see some shiny spots. Those shiny spots are where the heavy amount of pigment was, or the watercolor, and it gives a really cool effect. This blue and purple one's really neat too. You can see those shiny spots. Those aren't in fact wet. Okay, so here is the crumbled up food wrap. This one is still wet because it's one of the later ones I did, but check out the results of that. Really fun, completely something that you can't predict, and I think that's part of the fun of this technique. Now this one's still quite wet. I'm just going to go ahead and dry it with my heat gun. You still get a great effect even though I didn't let it dry very long. Now to turn these into cards, I'm going to be using the new Hero Arts My Monthly June kit. So in the kit, you get everything you see here. That's a large 6x8 stamp set, the coordinating dies, and a bunch of accessories. It's a great deal. They actually charge half the value of the kit, so it's really worth checking out. Now for this, I am also using a tree die that is available as an add-on, so you can buy it in addition to the kit. And then I'll be using the kit itself. I cut a bunch of these trees from black cardstock, and later on we'll do some from white. This is the stamp set. Now this was a prototype, so it's hard to see here, but I'm using a few elements from this large stamp set. For the first card, I'm going to be using some giraffes. Now to get some inspiration on how to pull this card together, I did a Google search on African sunset, and I'm going to kind of follow some of the pictures that I see here to get the night sky, to get the trees right, and the animals. You really can do whatever you want, but sometimes if you're stuck, that's a good trick. So I'm taking the grass stamp from that stamp set and putting it right against the inside edge of my MISTI so I can make sure it's straight. Now I am putting one of the pieces that I trimmed down that I created with the wrapped watercolor technique, and I'm going to stamp on there with black ink. Now, since I'm stamping on so much texture, I'm going to use my MISTI so I can stamp it a few times to make sure it's good and black and complete. If you don't have the MISTI, that's fine. Just use an acrylic block and stamp it the best you can, and it'll be just fine. So the grass wasn't long enough for the piece I did, so I'm going to stamp it twice in my MISTI. I find when I have long stamps like this, it's really good to use up against the edge of the MISTI because I can make sure it's straight and I won't have any curve to it. Okay, so after I've stamped my grass with the black ink, I'm going to go ahead and add my little giraffe to it. Again, I'm doing this right against the bottom of the MISTI just because it seemed easiest. So I'm placing them both in there. I'll use my bar magnet to keep it from moving. And now I can stamp those in black ink. And again, I'm going to stamp this a few times. Now, if you want to, you could instead black heat emboss this or stamp this with a black pigment ink and clear heat emboss it. But I wanted to keep this kind of smooth looking, so that's why I just used the black dye ink. I also added a stamp sentiment from the same stamp set, and then I heat set it because there might be some slick spots on that watercolor background, so you want to make sure the black ink dries completely. Okay, so let's put this onto a card. I actually have the watercolor piece tucked behind two raised pieces of white cardstock. So I have a 4¼ by 5½ inch white note card, and I'm going to use foam tape to tape a piece of white cardstock to the bottom. It's a little under an inch tall. Then I'm going to glue our watercolor piece right down onto the card using some strong adhesive, since there might be some warping to that watercolor paper. And I'm going to tuck that down below that little white piece, just right under it, so that my grass peeks out. And then I will add another white piece above that. So that watercolor piece is kind of set back. Now I'm using a lot of foam tape here because I want this to hold up when I send it through the mail. You could instead use craft foam if you want to, but usually when I have smaller pieces like this, I like to just use the foam tape. Next, I'm going to add that black die cut tree. Now remember, this tree is cut from one of the coordinating dies that's available for this month's stamp set. Just putting some adhesive on the back. I'm going to tuck the bottom of the tree underneath that white piece on the bottom, and then let this kind of peek out over the card at the top. Then all I have to do is flip it over and trim the excess that's hanging off the side. So I really like this black on that bold color. I also decided to add a few birds in the sky. There are a bunch of little bird images and other small animals in this stamp set. I feel that kind of completes the scene. So there is the first example, and I did a lot of the cards the same way. On some of them I used elephants, just kind of changed it up a bit. Now this one I did a completely different design I wanted to show you. Now this die is actually available in that June kit. So it's this circle die kind of for a moon in the sky. So I'm going to cut two out from that piece that I had. That was the first watercolor piece we created. I felt the color was a little light, so I went ahead and added some distress ink over it to kind of darken it. So don't be afraid to do that if you're not happy with how intense the color is. On all the other examples, I put more color down, with more watercolor down first, so the results were more intense. So here's how I stamped on this. I have my white note card, and I'm placing that little moon kind of image off to the side on my card, just holding it there. I'm not gluing it down. I have my little giraffe overlapping that moon piece and the white note card. And I'm going to go ahead and put that into my MISTI and stamp that with black ink. Now I'm going to stamp it first, and this will stamp the giraffe on the moon and the card. Now holding the card in the same spot, but removing the moon, I'm going to stamp it again. And check it out, I have my giraffe on the note card and on the moon. So now when I go to glue the moon down, I can line it up, and I have a complete, like, continual giraffe between the two. There's not like a little edge there on the bottom of the moon. Then I decided to add a few little birds to this and a sentiment. And for a little bit of shimmer on some of these cards, I drew like some lines of Wink of Stella shimmer in the sky background just to give a bit of shine. Now I really wanted this to be intense, so I went over it a few times. It really makes a big difference on a simple card like this. So it's kind of hard to see in the video, but there is an intense amount of shimmer in those little stripes that we put into the sky. There you can see some of the shimmer that I added. So there is another way you can use this kit along with this technique. I also wanted to mention that on some of the darker watercolor pieces that I created, I used white heat embossing instead of black stamping. So I did it the same way as I did the last cards, but instead of using black ink, I white heat embossed, and instead of a black die cut tree, I did a white die cut tree. This is a really fun technique that you could use in so many different ways. I used it for night sky, but you could use it for just a background on a card. So I thought I would show that in a very simple way. I wanted to use this new Hero Arts Lion stamp set. This is brand new. It's a color layering or stamp layering set, and I used one of those wrapped watercolor backgrounds. So I'll show you that in a moment. Wanted to show you this lion because I think it's so amazing how it stamps together. I stamped the bottom layer with soft vanilla. The next layer I did with soft sand, but that was a little light, so I did it again with soft brown, just to make it a little bit darker. Don't be afraid to change your colors as you go. Then the last layer is the pumpkin pie. So the layering images in the stamp set are very easy to line up. Once I was done, I added a little bit of highlighting with the black pen, just to make his eyes and his nose pop a little bit. Now check out the background on this one. I did that wrapped watercolor technique that I've shown you many times in this video. I used gold watercolor on craft cardstock, and I crumbled up the food color or the food wrap and put that on top, and check out that beautiful variation you get in the background. It's so much fun and great for simple background. In this photo here, you can see that gold shine with all the variation in it. Really fun to do and such a fast card to pull together. Now before we go, I just want to show you all the finished cards. Here's the one that I did with a bit of a different design using that moon die cut. You can see the shimmer that's dried on there. I did also stamp coordinating envelopes. I stamped on the flap of the envelopes using 2 new background stamps from Hero Arts, and I'll link to those below. Here are 2 others I did. The first one's the one I showed you. On the right is one that I did with some elephants and a huge thanks sentiment, and that has a little bit of purple on it. And probably my favorite of all the backgrounds is this lion one to the right. This is where I put down the intense amount of color, and then I crumbled the food wrap and pressed it in instead of stretching it out. And I really like the results of that. You can see here that it's really intense. You get a lot of fun variation, and it's very unexpected. So I think I'll be doing that technique more in the future. Now remember when I had the blue cardstock and I put some of the Fine Tech shimmer watercolor on top of it, the pearlescent watercolor, and then did the food wrap? Here's the result of that. It's beautiful in real life. It just has a little bit of interest in the background there. It catches your eye a little bit more. Definitely fun to try. Then I also did the few with the white heat embossing and the white die cut. I thought this worked best on any of the pieces that I created that were darker instead of doing the black on it. So it gives a different look, but all of these are very quick to pull together. I do recommend using an anti-static powder tool when you're white heat embossing on these watercolor backgrounds. So there you have it, a bunch of examples using a wrapped watercolor technique with food wrap. It's so easy, anybody can do it. My kids and I are going to play with the technique today. If you're interested in seeing all of these cards, I have them photographed over on my blog. I also have the supplies there or in the YouTube description below. In the middle are 2 other videos that might be of interest to you. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you want to see more, hit that subscribe button, and I hope to see you back soon.